Sioux Falls, and welcome to Planning Preview for the month of June. My name is Jason Bieber at the Planning Office with the City of Sioux Falls, and joined here today is Kurt Johnson with our Planning Commission Chairman. It's great to see you, Kurt.
Great to be here, Jason. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, looking at the agenda that's coming into the June meeting here, we have a lot to talk about, so it's okay with you. I think we should just dive right in. Our first item appears to be kind of a change in density of a residential project. Why don't you tell us about this one?
Yeah, so this is one of those kind of existing houses that we have in kind of our core area that's been kind of utilized as a triplex for some time and just haven't been zoned correctly. So now we're kind of coming in and the applicant's looking to maybe transfer that or sell it off to somebody else. So we're making sure everything's good, and he's coming in to rezone it to allow the existing triplex to stay.
No, that's a great idea there, and I'm glad that we can accommodate that, and hopefully we'll definitely see the benefits in that neighborhood. Our next item here, this is kind of a little switch. We're kind of going from a residential to something slightly off use compared to a residential task. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about this one? And
yeah, great. This is kind of out, these streets that are on here are a little bit, most people don't know where they are, but it's really northwest corner of Southwestern Avenue and 85th Street. So if you kind of driven out there, fronting Western Avenue, there's quite a bit of office uses. And so this is actually west of those. There's an existing office lot, and then what they're doing is taking a small strip of a fourplex lot to the south and zoning that office just to give it a little bit more space on that office lot to hopefully have something like an insurance or dental office go on that property.
yeah, that's a good, consistent plan for that particular neighborhood and for that particular swath there, so that's good to see.
Yeah, it gives us that good transition from that kind of collector of Bitterroot Street and then to those existing and proposed townhomes to the south of this office lot. So it does a good job of buffering.
No, very good. Our next one here, this one's kind of exciting because for me, whenever I see anything around the Sanford sports area, just all the different uses that are out there and everything coming together the way it is, I mean, it's really something to see. What do we have going with this project?
Yeah, you're exactly right, Kurt. That whole area, kind of Benson and Westport and Interstate 29, has really developed significantly over the last couple of years. Kind of on the south side of Benson Road is where we have more of our heavy commercial uses, like the Fleet Farm gas station, and then there's some additional lots that will be developed down the line. And then to the east of that is really where Sanford has done their sports complex to give us a lot of those institutional uses. And I know from my perspective as being a baseball parent, we're super excited for those Little League and baseball fields and softball fields to open up next year. But this is actually to the north of the Fleet Farm on the north side of Benson Road.
Okay.
And there's some area over there that's zoned commercial, but this is kind of the north end of that. And really what we've seen over there on that side, adjacent to 29, is more industrial uses. So this kind of is a rezoning that really is the same theme of what we've been seeing out there north of the Benson Road. Out in that area of the Sanford Sports Complex.
No, that's great to see, and just seeing that area fill in from what it had been, just basically either open fields and such. It's just it's great to see that evolution out there.
Yep, absolutely.
Kind of switching gears here, we're going to our far east part of town, I believe, with this next one, again, changing density, changing purpose. What do we have going on here on East Madison?
Yeah, so this is kind of an interesting one. As we've kind of seen over the years, you know, a lot of these churches had kind of bought property on the outside of Sioux Falls, right? And so as large tracts of land that maybe were a little bit more than they needed for the church, maybe they were going to plan in the future a daycare or a school there and maybe have went away with it. But this is actually a church on Madison that's looking to sell off an east portion of there, and then a developer is looking to come in and getting us some more housing, doing some twin homes on there, which is great for the church. It gives them a little bit of cash, gives them the ability to sell off some of the property maybe they're not using, and then from a city perspective, we're going to get ourselves, you know, 8 to 9 units that really doesn't cost us any more infrastructure costs. So it's kind of a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, most definitely, and thank you for that elaboration there. I think it's definitely a project to look forward to in that area. Our next item, this kind of hits home somewhat literally. I'm a West Sider, if you will. So seeing this kind of evolution out on the west side, you know, saying way west of Marion Road, and that's what we're talking about here. This is something else. So look forward to hearing more on this one.
Yeah, so this is kind of our third corner out there on 41st and Ellis. We have the northeast corner where you've got your Fairway, Starbucks, car wash there. The northwest corner is where Lloyd's kind of doing some commercial, but really they started with more of the apartment uses.
Sure.
On the northwest corner, we do have that existing indoor storage facility that's out there. So this is now the southwest corner of that where Lloyd is starting to develop again and looking to do commercial right at that hard corner of 41st and Ellis, and then transition with some apartments to the west and to the south, and really start filling in that whole intersection, really changing the landscape. You know, 5 years ago it was just all farm fields out there. We had a pretty big road out there, but really nothing developed around it. So.
No, very good. Our next items that we're going to be talking about here, we're kind of going back to our administrative, what the commission does in an administrative sense with conditional uses. What's our first one here that we're going to be looking at from that perspective?
Yeah, and that's a great point, Kurt. These conditional uses where you guys know on the Planning Commission, you're kind of the final say on it unless it's appealed. So these aren't just recommendations, you're really approving most of these. And like I said, unless somebody would want to appeal it to the City Council. So you're right, these are kind of your administrative duties. First one we have here is an on-sale alcoholic beverage establishment within 500 feet of a sensitive land use. It's really that southwest corner of Arrowhead Parkway and Bonson or 10th Street as you get out there. Existing strip mall, they're just looking to put kind of a casino in one of those tenant spaces out there.
Excellent. And you know, keeping with that same theme, it appears we're something similar with our next item after that. Again, another conditional use.
Yep.
Unless appealed, kind of final action by the commission. So.
Yep, exactly. And this is another one just south of this area. And so there's an existing building there. I believe it was an old church at one time and parking lot. And they're looking to do a similar thing to put a casino with on-sale alcoholic beverage establishments. There's pretty good buffering, you know, to the south with apartments, and then the north, as we know, on 10th Street, that's a pretty big commercial corridor. There is an existing house to the east of Bonson Avenue. So us as staff are just going to be requesting the applicant to maybe try and do a little bit more with landscaping along Bonson Avenue to try and soften that alcohol use from that existing house to the east.
Oh, excellent. Very good. Look forward to hearing more about that one. Our next item and our last item I believe we're going to be discussing here, kind of I don't think I've seen one of these in quite some time. We want to add an accessory unit, but it's a little unconventional. Why don't you tell us about what we're doing here?
Yeah, great that we can highlight this one. This is a little bit different of what we call an accessory dwelling unit, an ADU, but it's really important for people to understand because we do get this question, like we do allow accessory dwelling units within the city of Sioux Falls.
Yes.
That was all part of Shape Places in 2014 to allow that. So there are ways to do accessory dwelling units to get some more density, or maybe you want rental property or Airbnb, or maybe your mother-in-law is going to come live with you or something like that. We do have those options. This one's in the Old Orchard area, and if you've kind of been out in that neighborhood, a lot of those houses are set back quite a ways from the street. So
sure, yeah.
the property owner here wants to do an accessory dwelling unit. Well, one of the criteria is it has to be in the rear yard. Well, the house is set back like 130 feet from the street, so the accessory dwelling unit really can't be in the rear yard, right? Because it's got to be behind the house. And so this one's just to the side of the house. So it's set back like 100 feet from the street, so it's really almost functions as a rear yard, but technically it's not. So that's really why they have to come in front of you, is to make sure that that's a good location for that, since it's not located in the rear yard. And from a city staff perspective, it still pretty much functions the same exact way as if it was in the rear yard.
Very good explanation on that one there. So thank you. This is quite a lineup, and I look forward to review in the actual meeting.
Yeah, and thanks for running through these with me, Kurt, and thanks, Sioux Falls. Stay tuned. When we come back from the break, we've got a very exciting special topic today with Sam Trebelcock from our planning department. We're going to go through some of our updated growth tier maps, which is really going to kind of shape future development within the city over the next 20 to 30 years. So stay tuned.
Hello and welcome to today's Maintenance Minute. My name is Seth and I'm here with Bruce. We're housing specialists with the City of Sioux Falls. Bruce, I have an older home with a block foundation, and every single spring I seem to get water coming into my basement. How do I take care of that?
Well, there's a lot of different ways you can take a look at that. You can check to see if you've got proper slope away from your house with the grade around the outside. That's one way to fix it. Another way is to do what we've got here, to go around the inside of the foundation and put in drain tile. Come in around, they take the cement out all the way around the perimeter in here, put drain tile down, pour concrete back over the top, put a sump pit in, and then you can discharge the water outside of your home. And that should hopefully take care of any groundwater issues or water coming in from the outside.
So the drain tile collects all the water, drains it into this pit, and the pump actually pumps it outside.
Right. Yep, it's pumped to the outside. There's a hose that's connected out there that can be moved around your yard. Some people use it to try and water their trees or their plants. The biggest thing is get it as far away from your house as possible, but not out onto the street or across the sidewalks.
Great. Well, there you go, folks. If you have an issue with water in your basement, sump pump is the way to go. If you'd like to see if one of our city programs can help you out, call 367-8180 or check us out online at siouxfalls.org.
Welcome back, Sioux Falls, from the break. I'm excited that we have Sam Trebelcock here from the Planning Office to talk a little bit about our updated tier maps that went to Planning Commission last month, and then we'll be going in front of City Council. So thanks for joining me today, Sam.
Yeah, you bet, Jason. Thank you.
So I want to get into here, before we actually talk about maybe some of the biggest changes that we've done, can you tell us a little bit about maybe how often do you update these maps, and really what considerations do you take into, or what data do you use to really figure out what's going to go in here and maybe where we're going to grow in the next 20 to 25 years?
Yeah, and that's really what the tier maps are. They're a growth management tool for us, is really indicating to citizens and developers when and where we're going to be developing over a 25-year period. So we have tiers. The tiers themselves, there's a tier 1, which is within the next 5 years where we're going to be growing into the development area. And then tier 2 is within the next 5 to 15 years. And then the tier 3 is where we're going to be growing in the next 5 or 15 to 25 years. So, what goes into that is, into that tier map is really looking at, begins with sewer. That kind of lays the groundwork for the tier maps and our growth management is, where can we service our sewer? But beyond that, it isn't just about sewer. It's also looking at our other utilities and facilities, and also where does the development community think where they're going to be growing, where the needs are, the demands are. So we're also looking at water and roads. We're also looking, at our drainage areas. We're looking at, what about the school districts? What about our other facilities that we're looking at, including fire stations? We need to look at all those things, and we kind of look at all those. There's actually 4 different maps in there that really tell a story amongst all those different types of facilities and utilities that kind of come together in a map that shows us where we're going to, those tier maps, and the growth is going to be.
And I think that's one of the things that was really surprising for me, because your team really focuses more on long-range planning, the comprehensive planning, and my team is really more focused on the day-to-day stuff, the development that's coming up. And one of those things that I really find surprising when we kind of collaborate together and maybe we meet together to go through these is really the notion that everybody thinks, hey, if I can flush a toilet, we're ready to start building there, right? That sewer is the only thing we need. And that's what really surprised me, with working with the other disciplines about roads and water. I mean, we really need all of that stuff. Like, you can sewer it, but if you can't drive there, what's the point, right?
Yeah, if all of a sudden you're driving on a gravel road, or you don't have city water available at that particular time, just having sewer there, you're right, it doesn't help. You need to have all those things available. And so that's what we're really trying to do. We're trying to coordinate all those different things. We don't want some utilities providing sewer in a certain area and then another utility providing water and roads in another area, and you can't do it and make it work in either place. So
And I think that's one of the greatest things. And then you also kind of touched upon it too, is school districts, right? If we're going to grow this way or that way, we got to really coordinate with those school districts to make sure that they realize that, hey, we're projecting, we're going to kind of grow this many acres this way, that you might want to be planning for the future also with, new elementary schools or additions or new high schools or new junior highs. Because I don't think most people realize that we have roughly 8 school districts within our city limits.
Right.
And so we're coordinating with all those people, all those different entities.
Yeah, so we have to sit down with those school districts, talk to them, because they're wondering, when is the services going to be available? When can we start building into that area? And so we work back and forth with them to try to determine that, so that they have a better idea when they can start building their schools, whether or not it's Harrisburg or Brandon, or other school districts now, including Sioux Falls.
Yeah. And that's a great point too. And so maybe talk a little bit about too, because I know we talk about this a lot. So the city really is constrained on certain ways we can grow. I mean, can you talk a little bit about which ways we have the easiest point to grow? The north, and then we run in the east, we run up to Brandon, in the south, maybe Harrisburg. Can you talk a little bit about how we work with maybe those 2 municipalities and all the municipalities around us, and then some of the environmental constraints maybe, or the airport constraints as we try and go north?
Yeah, so I mean, starting with the north, you do have some constraints with the airport. You're right, absolutely, Jason. And then as you go further into the north, there's some floodplain constraints that you have to be consider there also. So that plays into it. There is an ability, and you'll see in our tier maps, for us to go to the northwest and northeast. So we continue to plan for that. As you go further to the east, you run into Brandon. And so we work with Brandon on a common growth boundary, and that's 6 Mile Road and Madison Street. For T, we run, our growth boundaries come together at 85th Street and I-29 essentially. Harrisburg, as you go further south, our growth boundaries come together there also at County 106, or what will become 101st Street in Sioux Falls. So those areas are certainly constraints. As we go further to the east to the Big Sioux River is a constraint. Some cases because it's Iowa, other cases because it's hard for us to go on the other side of the river as we go further east.
I think that was funny. That kind of just clicked in my head when you said 101st Street. That's our first triple-digit street, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of crazy that we will be at 101st Street. So we kind of talked maybe a little bit about how you get to maybe the point to where you guys are updating the maps. In a perfect world, how often would you like to update those tier maps? Are you thinking yearly, every 3 years, 5 years, 10 years?
Yeah. So we certainly want to do it every year. We haven't necessarily been able to do it every year, especially as of late, but that's our goal, because we want to do it ahead of our capital improvements plan process. And there's changes, especially lately, as much growth as we've had. We need to update it every year now. And so that's certainly the goal, ahead of the capital improvements plan process, so that everybody at City Hall understands what's going on in terms of the growth and the needs and those kind of things. So
yeah, and also the development community, they got to understand where maybe we're going to go, and to decide maybe they also get to provide their input with some of that stuff too, with arterial streets and that, or where we should be putting that type of money in. So we kind of went through that, which is great. Maybe can you give us an idea of the updated plan, where we're looking, or what maybe some major changes are that people aren't aware of?
So, I mean, some of the biggest changes that show up on this particular map is in the south area. Before, the map shows a lot of that area tier 3. As we're starting now to bring in Veterans Parkway on the south side, and as we're moving further into the future, we're able to, some of that area will be tier 1, some of that area will be tier 2, and some of that area will now be tier 3. On the west side, you'll see a little expanded area out there for tier 1 and tier 2. So that there's some changes out there on the west side. And then also on the northwest area, with Foundation Park, as much things that have been going on there, there's additional tier 1 area because of the needs that we have for industrial. Beyond that, there's areas on the east that have changed just a little bit here and there, but those are the major changes.
Yeah, and I think people will be kind of maybe excited, some of those homeowners or potential future homeowners, to really how much land you're going to be opening up in the kind of a desirable Harrisburg school district where people seem to want to get. And that's also another thing that, like we talked about, you have to coordinate with Harrisburg with all those acres that we feel like we can open up in the next 20 years. That's going to be quite a few households and quite a few children that will then need to go to their schools. So for them to plan for that aspect of it.
And that's exactly right. So in a lot of cases, we're telling Harrisburg, this is what we see in terms of number of households that are going to be in your school district or any other school district that's in our area, for them to be able to help them plan all their different schools, whether that's elementary, middle, or high schools.
Yeah, that's great, and I know it's a daunting task. And like I said, when I sit in some of those meetings trying to keep up with growth, it almost blows my mind how we're ever going to kind of get there. But typically, if you could let us, maybe the viewers know and myself, how many acres do we kind of consume a year, and really what does that then translate into how many you need in each tier, as you talked about tier 1, 2, and 3?
Yeah. So really we're about 1,000 acres a year, just in general terms. So we have about 25,000 acres that are in our tiers, which would make sense because it goes out to about 25 years. We certainly have adequate number of acres in tier 1. We still are working to gain enough adequate acres in tier 2, and then we certainly have the adequate number in tier 3.
So to be able to get more adequate acres in tier 2, that's more CIP dollars to open up to do more sewer infrastructure, roads, water, parks, police, all that stuff. And so those are the things that you always budget every year in the budget. The CIP budget is figuring out we need more money to do this, to be able to get what we think we need to consume every year to support the number of people that are coming to Sioux Falls.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and so we just continue to work through that. Like I said, we have enough land for the next 5 years, which is obviously the most important.
Yeah.
And then we just continue to work towards that tier 2 and tier 3 area. And a lot of it, of course, is because we've been growing more quickly over the past 3, 4, 5 years, and so we just got to continue to work that into the plan.
And I think that's, I always tell people when I'm doing some bus tours or whatever that what we plan for, we have roughly 6,000 to 7,000 people move to Sioux Falls each year. So really, I mean, you guys are doing it more, but you're planning for essentially bringing a town the size of Brookings here every 4 years.
Right.
I mean, 24,000 people. That means you got to plan for all those households, all that retail, all those daycares, all those schools, all the office. So I think that's just such a daunting task to be able to essentially plan for Brookings every 4 years. I mean, that's what you're doing.
Right.
And so I think that's great that if we can get on that cycle of updating the tier maps every year, that'll help us kind of, maybe it accelerated last year and so we need to get more acres, or maybe, hey, the population has come back a little bit and maybe we can scale that back. So I think that's a great idea to be able to try and update it as much as possible.
Right, and that's a lot of the reason for that is because there has been more growth lately.
Yeah.
So we know it's very important to update more often.
Yeah, well, it's great information, and I know the viewers at home will be able to see some of the maps that we'll put online as part of this discussion, as part of this TV program. But I know from me and from everybody what you guys deal with all the time and dealing with that growth and really looking out so far. It's amazing the job that you guys do, and I really appreciate you coming on the show to tell us a little bit about this. And hopefully we'll be doing this next year if we're going to update it every year, right?
Yeah, it'd be perfect. I'd be glad to come on.
Great. Hopefully we'll have you back. Thanks a lot, Sioux Falls, for joining us for Planning Preview for the month of June. The Planning Commission meeting is June 1st at 6 o'clock at Carnegie Town Hall. We'd love for anybody to come out if they have any questions or concerns on the agenda items, or if they have any general public input. We allow 5 minutes of public input at the end of the agenda for anybody to talk about anything. So thanks, Sioux Falls.